Ben, you wrote a bit of a manifesto recently talking about the past of how we got here in terms of a bunch of legislative history, which I was really happy to read and got me thinking about where we're going also. And
Yeah.
you and I talked about it, and we thought this is a great opportunity to really speak to people who listen to this podcast and who are turning to us for our thoughts to turn towards the future a little bit. Uh, do you want to set the table by giving us a little bit of what was your reasoning behind talking about where we came from and what were some of the big takeaways?
Yeah. And I appreciate you subscribing to my Infused Insights newsletter. So thank you for reading. Well,
Totally.
look, I mean, it was inspired by just the emotional kind of responses to what's been happening in Texas. And anytime something like what happens with Senate Bill 3 in Texas, the banning of hemp, or any other kind of movement on cannabis or hemp, there seems to be a lot of pointing the finger, blaming, complaining. And what often happens is we're being pitted against each other, hemp versus cannabis, hemp beverages versus the rest of hemp, licensed cannabis operators, dispensaries versus brands. It's just happening perpetually. And I think we're put into this terrible situation where people are fighting for their livelihoods, and that is forcing them to lose perspective on the greater scope of our overall objective as an industry. And the one thing I've always confidently fallen back on, and why I haven't been afraid to be outspoken about like my perspectives, is that at the end of the day, I want to see the plant recognized for what it is and completely normalized and destigmatized and made available responsibly to society, right? And in fact, that's embedded into our company's mission. Our purpose as a company is to unlock the healing powers of the plant and create accessible or create access to people responsibly around the world, right? So as long as we're doing that, and we're on the right path. And so I always try to ask myself, like, how did we get here? And if we look at the greater arc of cannabinoids and people's familiarity with them, you have to look all the way back to the drug wars. You have to look at those times, those decades where cannabis and hemp were both on the Controlled Substances Act, essentially being treated as the same plant, as we often like to talk about. And it wasn't until recently where we had this bifurcation, right? We had the 2014 Farm Bill that kind of started to signal the separation of hemp and cannabis and created some interesting pathways. 2018 is what really kicked off this CBD boom. And it wasn't really until the pandemic years and beyond where we really started to understand the opportunities with intoxicating compounds and all this. And so
Isn't
it's
it
been a really
interesting
short.
that it took a few years? These legislative shifts in the Farm Bill, both in 2014 and in 2018, did open doors, but it was not
Mhm.
immediate. People weren't paying attention to the language and then what opportunities the language provided like they are today, because now there's so much writing on it. Once the door became open, now we've got hawks looking at every word, making
Yeah,
sure that the door stays open or trying to
well, it's
close the
like
door.
someone cracks the door open and then, like, a bunch of people, like, walking by. It's like one person stops, "Hey, is that door open?" And then they, like, start pushing on it a little bit, and all of a sudden, they're, like, peeking around through the doors like, "Anyone in here?" And then once it's open, it's like, boom, kick it open. And then everyone's like, "Hey, everybody in, this door's open."
Now
And
there's a festival inside.
now there's a rave, and we're having a great time. It's like, we should do this all the time. And,
Mhm.
and it's really for me, like, I don't want to, as Mark Hauser said, I don't want to be flippant, but it's kind of been like this great experiment opportunity to create access to cannabinoids, to leverage the normalcy that the legalized movement has created